It was the game of the century, the game of the millennium, the game of the year in the NFL, and it lived up to every single ounce of the hype. By far, without question, the single greatest finish we've ever seen to a Thursday night football game. She's Caroline Fenton. I'm Jason Fitz. We're here on Yahoo Sports Daily. You see Frank Schwab say game of the year, game of the decade. Who knows? What is sure is that somehow, some way, the Seahawks exit that game against the Rams with a big win. If you went to sleep early on Thursday night, you missed one of the greatest finishes we've seen all year. Trailing by 16 points with about 8 minutes to go in the fourth quarter, the Seattle Seahawks come storming back and get a win. Caroline, I don't know. I want to come in and say this changes everything, and it does in the seedings, but I don't know if I'm supposed to take the Seattle Seahawks I saw for 4.5 quarters as who they are, or if the Seattle Seahawks we saw for the last half of the fourth quarter and overtime is who they are. I am lost on how to break this game down.
Yeah, I mean, it's very rare that we get a game with this much hype, with this much on the line, that doesn't just deliver based on the level of hype that we were giving it. It exceeds the level of hype. Like, this was truly a Stefan from SNL Weekend Update kind of game, because this game had everything. And even though it truly had everything, even though we can truly call this one of the games of the year. Right now, I feel pretty confident in saying, call me a prisoner of the moment. This was the best game of the year. I don't think my mind is drastically changed about either of these two teams. And it's because we both, Fitz, you and I both agreed that the Rams and the Seahawks were not just the two best teams in the NFC. These were the two best teams in the NFL. Last night, I think we saw a battle between the two best teams in the NFL, that it just feels kind of perfect that these two teams split this series. Rams get the first one, Seahawks get the second one. And I think, you could maybe say, well, you thought the Rams were the best team in the league. Now they lost. Now what do you have to say for yourself? I'm kind of putting you on the spot here. So if you don't have the answer to this question, I do not blame you. A couple of weeks ago, we did a breakdown of the fatal flaws for every team that we viewed as legitimate Super Bowl contenders, which, of course, you can find that on the Yahoo Sports YouTube page. Our YouTube team does such a fabulous job. Fitz, do you by any chance remember what I said was the fatal flaw of the Los Angeles Rams?
No. What was the fatal flaw?
Special teams. What did we see last night?
You did say that. Oh, my God. That's amazing.
Let me pat myself on the back here. Let me show some notes here, some receipts here. Thank you. Thank you so much. I said it was special teams. What did the Rams do last night? They missed a 48-yard field goal, which, I'm sorry, missing a 48-yard field goal in the National Football League when the elements weren't really that big of a factor. I don't really know how you do that. That is an absolute just kick in the butt there. And then they give up a punt return for a touchdown. And I kind of made fun of it at the time. I said, look, this is the only weakness that I can find on this team. Like, please don't make this sound like it's just kind of me grasping for straws here. But when we're talking about games of inches, when we're talking about games in the postseason, when the difference is in the margins, special teams can make a big difference. And there are so many different things that you can point to last night as to why the Rams crashed and burned and gave up a double-digit lead, or why the Seahawks were able to come storming back in the second half, the way that the Seahawks adjusted defensively, the way that the Rams could not really run the football in the second half. So many different little bullet points that we can break down today, but when it comes down to it, when I see a missed field goal and a punt return for a touchdown, and it was a difference of 1 point in overtime, that makes the difference. So long story short, I don't feel different about these two teams because I already saw both of these two teams as the two best teams in the National Football League, but teams, albeit, that have their flaws.
Well, here's the thing. To your point, the Rams last night became the first team in NFL history. This has never happened before. With more than 500 yards on offense, no turnovers, and an opponent with 3 or more turnovers. And they lost, right? Like, that's the first time that's ever happened that a team has had those numbers and lost. And I look at that, Caroline, and I just keep thinking about this is the second time this year that the Seahawks had played a bad football game against the Rams and then stormed back. Remember, the first time these two teams played, it was a bad game by Seattle. We saw them turn the football over and over and over again. The narrative the next day was that Sam Darnold has a Rams problem, which might still be true. And through all of that, it still came down to, albeit a very long field goal, but a field goal opportunity for the Seahawks to win at the end. Now we get It's like the same thing. How many of us, me included, I will raise my hand and throw myself under the bus. I was texting our group last night saying, oh, tomorrow's going to be a Sam Darnold conversation. And guess what? I didn't mean about the greatness of Sam Darnold. Like through 3.5 quarters, Sam Darnold looked like he was seeing ghosts again. Through 3.5 quarters, Sam Darnold looked like he was personifying every stereotype we have of how he plays the game. He was making all of the little chirps become loud roars last night. And then all of a sudden in the fourth quarter, he goes off for 144 yards and a couple of tutties in the fourth quarter. We've never seen Seattle in their entire team history come back from a 16-point fourth quarter deficit and win. And they did that last night because Sam Darnold got hot. This offense got hot. They got the punt return. Everything started breaking their way. So it's weird for me because usually being able to win through your worst is a sign of resilience. But we've seen the Seahawks play their worst now twice against the Rams. One time they get a close loss. One time they get a close win. What we learned is that the Seahawks can win a game that looks ugly. But we also learned that the Seahawks against the Rams always play an ugly football game. And it's concerning. I can't not make the first 3 quarters concerning if I'm walking into this as a Seahawks fan or as a Seahawks supporter saying that's the best team in the NFC. I am concerned with the way that they look for 3 quarters, even if they looked incredible at the end.
Which is another reason why I don't feel drastically different about either of these two teams, because we were texting in our group text last night, and I said verbatim, sometimes I worry that my criticism of my lack of trust of Sam Darnold is lazy, because it's just, same old Sam Darnold, and then Sam Darnold throws another brutal pick, and I'm like, nope, criticism justified, because he makes some of those just, what in the world are you doing kind of throws in these big time moments. Now, we're not going to critique it. We're not going to peel back all the layers on those picks because they won. But you can also criticize Sam Darnold and the Seahawks team in a win, because as much as I was picking apart the Rams and the small little mistakes that they maybe made, the weird phantom illegal man downfield call on the first drive, and it was a field goal instead of a touchdown. Like, that's a massive difference in this kind of game. Well, we also have to point out the weirdest 2-point conversion I have ever seen in my entire life. It looks like it's a play that's just dead to rights. It gets batted down. They blow the whistle, and then Zach Charbonnet picks up the ball in the end zone. And it's like, whoa, hold on. Let's review it, because it was a backwards pass. And if it's a backward pass, it's essentially a fumble. So what Zach Charbonnet did was recover the fumble in the end zone. I don't even think Zach Charbonnet knew what he was doing. I think that he was just picking up the ball to give it to the refs, and it ended up being one of the game-changing, game-turning kind of plays in this game. So I think that there is plenty of good to see from the Rams even in a loss. Their defense and how nasty they were playing in that first half. I mean, they were really up front on both lines of scrimmage. They were giving it to the Seahawks. I think that gives me all the hope and optimism in the world that the Rams still are the team that we thought they were, that I thought they were going into that game. And I think that there's plenty to critique on the Seahawks side of things, even in a win, because we didn't see the best brand of football from the Seahawks. But I do want to give the Seahawks their due. Let me give a round of applause to Mike Macdonald for going for 2 at the end of the game in overtime. It could have been really easy for him to say, let's just kick it. Let's just go for the tie. Let's play it safe because a tie is better than a loss. No, because a win is significantly better than a tie. That a tie didn't really help the Seahawks at all in the standings. That's pretty much gift wrapping the Rams the division and the number 1 overall seed and serving it on a nice, pretty platter. I will give Mike Macdonald a whole lot of credit for saying, F it, we're going for it. We're going for the 2-point conversion. And it paid off.
I think they had to, and you're right, a tie would have still clinched a playoff spot. But remembering that they lost the first game to the Rams, the analytics show that if they get a tie in this game, they no longer have a tiebreaker against the Rams, making it almost impossible for them to win the division. So what Mike really, I think, told the world in that moment is like, hey, we've got plenty of time to clinch our playoff spot. We're going to go try and win the division and try and get the one seed in the NFC, which they may have done. I also want to go back to the 2-point conversion you mentioned. They had the tweet up, but I want to pull it up again from Terry McAuley, because this is where NFL fans, we have to acknowledge as fans and as media sometimes, there are times that rules come up that you just don't cover very often, and you need to take the opportunity not to yell, but instead to listen. Because if you actually read what Terry McAuley here explains, you'll understand why it was a perfect call. When a backwards pass is ruled forward and incomplete, replay can reverse it if there's a clear recovery in the immediate continuing action. The recovering team awarded the ball at the spot of recovery. Let me make this perfectly clear. Whether a whistle is blown or not is completely irrelevant. Also, Macaulay in another tweet explained to someone that was tweeting him about it. This was a backwards pass considered a lateral, not a fumble, which is why it is recoverable in the end zone by anybody. So the rules are different. The wild thing is that what we saw last night, there's a rule that literally applies to it. So in a world where we constantly trash everything that officials do, we may not like the rule. We may not have known about the rule. We may not understand the rule, but the refs got the rule right. And as a fan of a team that has had to live through things like the tuck rule that we didn't know existed in that moment, or I remember when a player for the Raiders landed on the ball inbounds and slid out of the back of the end zone because of the water on the field, which at the time was a touchback. They had to go in and change the rules. Sometimes your team is impacted by rules that the whole world doesn't really know about. And that's shame on all of us for immediately hopping on the refs. I've seen social media go off on this over and over and over again like it's some great conspiracy or the refs jobbed a team over. I've even seen, obviously, Puka had a tweet up that was deleted about the officials in this game. The officials got the call right. They got the call right in the moment. The replay got the right.
Yeah.
We may not know the call, but the call is right. So I want to give the officials a little credit for getting the rules right, even the rules that we don't know about.
Yeah, it was weird and funky. And I do always love an opportunity to learn. Because in that moment, I was like, wait, whoa, what's going on? Like at that moment, I was like ready to get up and go refill my water glass because I just figured that it was going to commercial. And I thought, what in the world is going on here? So to your point, yes, credit to the officials for getting that one right. But can we criticize the officials for that weird illegal man downfield call?
Yeah,
that should have been a Rams touchdown.
That was a bad one. Yeah, I mean, they're not going to get them all.
Call.
They're not going to get them all. And now, here's what's wild. The Rams, obviously, because you and I talked about this all week leading up to it, the Rams don't control their own destiny now. But Seattle and San Francisco, for anyone not paying attention, Seattle and San Francisco are now in a two-headed race, essentially, for the number one overall seed in the NFC. After what we saw last night, do you think the NFC is going to end up going through Seattle or San Fran?
So what is I don't have it up in front of me, so please forgive me on that. The Rams still have a shot at the number one overall seed. They just don't necessarily control their own destiny. So I'm going to go with none of the above.
The Rams would have to win out, and Seattle would have to lose a game. San Francisco would have to lose somewhere else, and then lose a game outside of that. Or if it comes down, if everybody wins out, if the Rams win out and the 49ers win out and the Seahawks win out, we go to week 18.
Well,
the Rams can do nothing.
We have a head-to-head between Seattle and San Francisco.
Right. That's the game that will decide it.
Someone's going to have to lose. So I'll leave between those two. I'll say Seattle.
But still like the Rams.
When Seattle gets the 49ers, and obviously when the 49ers get Seattle, the Rams get the Cardinals. So yeah, I like the Rams' odds of winning out.
And Seattle has got, at this point, Seattle will go to the Panthers next week, and then they finish at San Francisco. That game should be, if all teams win out, that game would be for the number one overall seed in the West, or in the NFC, I should say. But you do also raise an interesting point, because let's not get it twisted. San Francisco has to go Colts, fine. Then they get the Bears and then the Seahawks. So there's still a world where San Francisco has a loss before they're out of this thing. You're right. There's still a weird path that gets the Rams to the number one overall seed. So you still like the Rams to figure out a miraculous way to get to the one?
I don't even think it's miraculous. They have to beat the Falcons and the Cardinals.
That's fair.
I trust them to do that.
That's fair. I think Seattle pulls it out, but I don't think right now, if you asked me if we played this Seahawks-Rams game 10 times, how would it end? I think 9 times out of 10 last night, what we saw would have ended in a Rams win over the Seahawks. So I'm not here to doubt.
I want this game a third time.
100%. I'm not here to doubt.
We deserve this a third time.
Historic night. Also, tip of the cap to Matt Stafford. A lot more we're going to break down on this game. Just getting started on the ramifications of this in the NFC. But coming up, we've got other quarterbacks to talk about, including Joe Burrow. What is next this offseason for the quarterback that has made it so abundantly clear he's not happy? How will that go over this offseason? We'll figure it out next. Joe Burrow can't see leaving the Bengals in 2026, but, quote, you think about a lot of things. That's part of the context of quotes from Joe Burrow at the podium because it's become a loud conversation about whether or not he's happy. If you watch the Netflix documentary Quarterback, you saw some of just what has become sort of a brooding Burrow, let's say it that way. And over the course of this year, his body language has shown that certainly he doesn't seem like there's a lot of joy in this process. And when he has talked about it at the podium over the last few weeks, it has created absolute chaos. You see the quote there. If I want to keep doing this, I have to have fun doing it. I've been through a lot. If I'm not having fun, what am I doing it for? Which suddenly became a conversation about whether he wants out of Cincinnati. Now, Caroline, I want to stress, every time he's been asked about does he want out of Cincinnati, he said no, and even seemed incredulous about how did you get that from my statements? I'm not sure what we're getting right here. In some ways, it seems like an introspective Burrow. In some ways, it seems like is Burrow trying to look his way out. Like, is this going to become the story of the offseason, everyone trying to figure out how to make Joe Burrow happy?
I think it already is. It's quickly what it's becoming. I'll go back to Radio Row at the Super Bowl last year. The conversation obviously was Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, and are they going to three-peat, and the Chiefs dynasty, so on and so forth. But a really big topic of discussion was Myles Garrett. Was Myles Garrett requesting a trade? Was what was going to happen with Myles Garrett? Who should trade for Myles Garrett? What are the Browns going to do with Myles Garrett? I think all of this conversation surrounding Joe Burrow is quickly ramping up for that to be a very similar situation, if not even bigger, because it's not just Joe Burrow. And for Joe Burrow to act so shocked at the reporters or the insinuation that he wants out of Cincinnati. Look, Joe's smarter than that. Joe's worked with the media long enough to know that his words bear weight. His words mean something. And I think Joe Burrow is smart enough to know that when his words mean something, he can portray any kind of message that he wants to portray. If he wants to make kind of, very ominous statements about how he's unhappy in football, he can quickly come back and say, no, I don't want out of Cincinnati. No, I don't want my head coach to be fired. Because what is he supposed to say? Get up at the podium and say, yeah, get Zach Taylor out of here. He's a ding dong. But when he says, if I'm doing this, I have to be happy, and I'm not happy right now, my first thought was, that is not a message to you. That is not a message to me. That is not a message to reporters. That's not a message to Bengals Nation. That's a message to ownership that, hey, look, I am your future. I am the focal point of this franchise. I am your franchise quarterback who got you to the Super Bowl after decades and decades and decades of suck. And I'm not happy. So what are you going to do for me? I think it was a calculated statement. And I don't say that in a derogatory way or in a negative way. But when you are somebody whose words are powerful, you know that you're kind of selling a statement in some form or fashion. So I think that Joe Burrow is the story. I think that the Bengals are the story. How do the Bengals decide to proceed when their quarterback makes statements that are making headlines across the country that he is not happy? How are you going to protect your number one asset in Joe Burrow?
So I totally see your interpretation of it. I just interpret it differently, honestly. And part of it is just because, I've only sat down with Joe Burrow a couple of times. I've interviewed him a couple of times. We haven't spent meaningful time together. I'm not going to pretend I know Joe Burrow. But in our time sitting together, when I have interviewed him, he's quiet and introspective. He's deep. He's a meaningful thinker, And when I interviewed him for Yahoo, we did an interview with he and Joe Montana. And as we sat down and talked just about some of the things that influence him and some of the ways that he looks at quarterback play, when you have that conversation, it's that you just see that he's built different. I think that Joe Burrow is the type of person that is philosophical, and the type of person that's a deep thinker in these moments, and he's just in his feels. He's deep in his thoughts right now. I don't know that I read it as a pointed message about the Cincinnati Bengals. I read all of his statements more about a pointed message about trying to find joy in life. He's made upwards of $177 million in his career. He doesn't have to play football. So you start looking around and saying, man, ever since it feels like from the outside looking in, ever since the burglarization of his home and the invasion of his privacy, some of the personal life stuff that he's gone through that's sort of been out there in the tabloids, it just feels like Joe is shut down a little bit. So to me, I'm just reading the body language and the tone and the volume in his speech and the cadence with how he speaks. It just seems all intentionally thoughtful. And so where I hear you that it certainly could be a statement to the Bengals, I think it could also just be a statement where Joe Burrow's looking around saying, man, I'm almost 30. I don't love doing this. Like, it doesn't feed my soul, man. I got to figure some things out. I got to find my joy. And to all of that, that's why I don't think it's going to be the offseason story, because as much as everybody wants to put Joe Burrow on another team, that would have to be done before the NFL draft. The salary cap hit to the Cincinnati Bengals alone would be upwards of $56 million, would be their dead cap space hit for a trade that takes place before June 1st. It would require a team then turn around and probably give, I would think, at least 4 number 1 picks in the draft, that sort of thing. It's going to take 4 first-rounders and more. I think the machinations of trying to trade him are so impossible. He's not going to go anywhere. So, like, honestly, I think it's a big story today because we're hearing from Joe. But once the Bengals are eliminated from the consciousness because he's not sitting at the podium every week, I think we're going to wake up in a few months and find that the Bengals haven't really made a lot of wholesale changes. They're just going to hope that they can figure it out, and Joe Burrow is going to come back as their quarterback. That's not the answer the Bengals want, but that's the answer that every reporter that I've talked to that I think does have a pretty good pulse of the team has said consistently, like, sweeping change isn't coming in Cincy. And I think we want it to be a more of a story than it will actually be.
And I think that's kind of what Joe Burrow is asking for, though, sweeping change in Cincy. Because I hear Joe Burrow, and I hear you on, look, there's a lot that's been going on in his personal life. His privacy has been invaded. That's a really icky feeling. But I will put myself in, their shoes. If I did an interview, a very public interview, and they asked me about Yahoo Sports Daily, and I said, yeah, it's great, but I just can't keep doing it if I'm not happy. Wouldn't you, Fitz, feel a little like that's maybe a personal attack on you or a personal attack on the work that we're doing together? Because even if there's things that's happening in my day-to-day life, if there's, if I'm suffering with something that's going on in my personal life, you can't help but think in an environment where we're talking about our work and I'm saying I can't do it if I'm not happy. Wouldn't you think that I'm not happy with you? And look, I hope that Joe Burrow is not dealing with something in his personal life. It kind of sounds like he is, and I hate that. And I hope that everything that happens behind closed doors is able to be settled, and Joe Burrow is able to kind of get out of what he's been dealing with. But I know Joe Burrow well enough. I'm not going to act like we're bestie pops, but I have covered him for several years. I was a student at LSU when he was at LSU. I interviewed him when he was a backup quarterback. I feel like I know his personality well enough to know that winning is everything to Joe Burrow. Breaking news. I know it's not necessarily like groundbreaking. Winning is everything to Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow wants to win. That is the most important thing to him. So if you have all of these things that are going on in his personal life, and you're losing, and you're banged up, and you just got blanked by a divisional rival, that just kind of compounds everything.
I will take your point and elevate one other thing that it makes me think about, because you mentioned if you did an interview and said, man, I just can't keep doing this. I think the part that would stun me is that I hadn't picked up on that. And as you said that, all I kept thinking is, how has Jamar Chase not picked up on this? Right? Like, because Jamar's been asked about it a couple of times, and he's been very much like, well, maybe I got to start picking him up. I mean, I don't usually have to do that. He doesn't usually need that, but maybe that's what I need to do. One thing we have to keep in mind is that the part of the identity of the Cincinnati Bengals has already been crafted by the wants of Joe Burrow, right? He made it clear he wanted to keep his friends and his weapons there at his disposal. He made it very clear that he wanted, Jamar and T. Higgins to still be part of this offense. He made it clear that he wanted the team to be aggressive in keeping those great players around him. It's stunning to me as you talk, and I think about the fact that whatever he's going through, Jamar Chase is by all accounts one of his closest friends, right? Like somebody that they have a bond together that we talk about all the time. I'm a little surprised that Jamar seems so lost on what exactly is going on with Joe. And so it does speak to there are no easy answers to complicated questions, because the fact is, you're right. Like, if you crave winning, man, if you crave winning, you're just not getting the opportunity to do it. They're much like Myles Garrett, much like Max Crosby. We talk about this a lot. Guys that are on teams that are, future Hall of Famers that suck. But it's different when you're a quarterback, because Joe Burrow is quickly becoming the modern Dan Marino. Dan Marino went to a Super Bowl his rookie year. Everybody thought that the Dolphins were about to go on tear, where year after year they were a perennial Super Bowl team. They never got back to the Super Bowl. And certainly Dan Marino always had weapons around him, but the Dolphins famously couldn't figure out how to get a running game or a defense around him half the time. And he had to be the heavy lifter of everything. And for a generation, he lifted the Dolphins just enough to always make them pretty good and not actually get them there. Like Joe Burrow is piece by piece the modern Dan Marino. The difference is back then, athletes didn't have the microphone, the 24/7 coverage, the sports talk coverage, Sports Center all day, shows like this, breaking it down. Joe does. And Joe does with, I think, arguably, we can have a list all day of the top quarterbacks, but one of the best personalities, one of the biggest personalities. So I don't think this is going anywhere, but I do think that the Bengals and Burrow are going to have to sit down in a room and figure out the important question, which is what will actually make Joe happy. We're going to break down more of this throughout the course. Obviously, this story's not going anywhere, but coming up next, college football playoff starts this weekend. We'll get Dan Wolken's thoughts on the epic matchups coming up next. If the first round of the college football playoff delivers all blowouts again, pitchforks will be out. My God, that's true. But it doesn't mean the CFP is broken. It means college football's postseason is normal. Dan Wolken has written a full column on this at Yahoo Sports that you have to check out, and he joins us now. All right, so give me the squeeze on it without, and giving the entire article, right? You just go read it. Why is it not an indicator that the whole process is broken?
Well, we've seen this almost every year in the college football playoff. If there's one or two blowouts, everybody loses their mind. What's wrong? We got to fix it. There's something happening. But, if you really look at sports from a more holistic view, playoffs are like this almost across the board. If you look at the NFL playoffs last year, and of course they've expanded their playoffs a bit, there was only one good game in the first round. The rest were blowouts. And you can sort of go across the NBA. You very rarely see a 7-game series in the first round of their playoffs. It's usually a sweep or maybe 5 games. And it's because you're including a lot of teams that really just aren't true championship contenders. And when they play the true championship contenders, they tend to get beat pretty badly. So this is just what it is. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong with all of these sports. College football, it's no different than anywhere else. You're going to have a subset of teams at the very top, and then you're going to have a few teams that are just not as good. And that's why the upsets we need to sort of cherish and we need to appreciate, because they don't come around very often. That's why they're upsets.
All right, let's stick with the concept of college football is broken. Old man yells at sky. We heard Eli Drinkwitz in one of his recent press conferences. He said that college football is broken. And quote, cracking is the word that he used. He talked about players getting financial literacy and players being set up to be, quality young men, not just quality football players. Is there any validity to what Eli Drinkwitz was saying there?
Well, there's no doubt this is a time of transition, and there's a lot of uncomfortable things happening throughout the ecosystem, especially with regard to recruiting and the transfer portal and players going in and out of programs. It's not ideal. It's not great for educational purposes, for stability. It certainly makes life a lot tougher for coaches and athletic directors who have to constantly deal with this personnel churn. But that's what you get in a system like this, where the universities and the presidents and the NCAA have been unable to come up with a regulatory framework that fits within federal law. Every time they try to enforce their own rule book, they get taken to court and they lose almost all the time. And so that's why you have the so-called Wild West that Drinkwitz and others talk about and complain about. And they're not wrong that this is not the way you would draw it up. But until college sports comes to the reality that they need to have a collective bargaining unit with the players and mutually agree that this is how the rules of the road are going to work, and both sides are going to apply them, and there's going to be some order to player movement and salary structure, then you are going to have a difficult system to manage. Right now, all college sports has done is go to Congress to try to get antitrust law written in their favor that would sort of roll the clock back 15 years. And I don't think that's going to happen for a variety of reasons, including the fact that Congress is basically dysfunctional and it's hard to pass any law, especially one like this.
Yeah, I mean, every time they challenge in court, they lose. You've pointed that out on Twitter before. So I will just remind everybody, like, the collective bargaining is the answer. Just get ready for it. Speaking of head coaches in college football, let's get to some of the action that we're trying to figure out in the world of hirings. Michigan, are they ever going to find a head coach? Who's going to be the head coach? Dan, are you leaving us to go coach Michigan? What are we doing here?
Well, I think there's a good chance they're going to have a head coach next week. Who it's going to be, I'm not sure. I do think it's going to be very interesting tonight in this college football playoff game with Alabama and Oklahoma to see what happens with Kalen DeBoer. If Alabama wins this game and they advance to the quarterfinals, which will be on New Year's, then I don't think there's any pathway for DeBoer to leave Alabama and go to Michigan. If they lose, I think this is going to be a very interesting weekend to see what happens. And there's a lot of reasons to believe that Michigan is kind of a place that would fit DeBoer better. In fact, if you go back a couple years before he took the Alabama job, there was a lot of talk that DeBoer was going to go to Michigan and replace Jim Harbaugh back then. But, that all didn't happen before the Alabama situation went down with Nick Saban. So, in other words, if Saban had retired a few weeks later, DeBoer might well be the head coach at Michigan right now. So I don't know what's in his head. Of course, he's made statements and denied interest, but you just constantly hear this chatter about DeBoer in Alabama, and it's so strong that you have to wonder if there is something to it.
All right, to follow up on that, I have a two-parter. Let's just live in a world where Kalen DeBoer does become the next head coach at Michigan. One, what does that say about Alabama? And two, who becomes the next head coach at Alabama?
I'm not sure what it says about Alabama. Alabama's obviously great job, great program. And I don't believe that it would be one of those situations where they're chasing him out of town or anything like that. The administration at Alabama is fully on board with Kalen DeBoer. I actually think the fan base at Alabama has been fine. Like, I don't think outside of the 2% fringe fan that there's a lot of dissatisfaction. I think there would be a recognition, though, that going into year 3 without a college football playoff win could start to get a little bit uncomfortable for him there. But I think it would just say more about the fit. He's from South Dakota, that sort of Midwest vibe he gives off probably fits a little bit better at Michigan than the fishbowl at Alabama. Again, we'll see what happens if they lose this game and whether he actually pulls the trigger on that. As far as what Alabama would do if he does leave, it's a tough situation right now and a tough time to be looking for a new head coach. And I don't have a lot of answers there for you. I'm sure they would find a great coach. And, whether it's, again, Kenny Dillingham seems to be popping up in a lot of these rumors as he talks with Arizona State about an extension. He'd certainly be somebody I would want. Dan Lanning at Oregon, but I think it's very hard to pry him out of there. Certainly Alabama looked at him last time. They'd have options, but it's not an ideal moment to be without a head coach.
I feel
Lane
like
Kiffin. I'm kidding.
Yeah, Lane Kiffin. Perfect. Let's keep. Lane Kiffin has been mentioned in a job in 3 days. It also feels like there's this weird tie, like Alabama and Kalen DeBoer. The fan base feels like a bad relationship where maybe he doesn't treat her all that great, and then all of a sudden she starts getting interest from somebody else. It's like, no, that's my girlfriend. I love her. You can't take her from me. That's like, it feels like there's this change happening. So, how's the game going to go this weekend then? How, like, if none of this is going to be an issue if Bama wins, do you think they win this weekend?
Well, I'm a little bit conflicted because I know how hard it is to beat a team twice in the same season. And we saw a few weeks ago, Oklahoma won that game in Tuscaloosa. It's really the game that got Oklahoma into the college football playoff. So that would sort of push me toward the Alabama side a little bit. But at the same time, just matchup-wise, Alabama can't run the ball. It's been a huge problem for them most of the season, especially late in the year. They were awful up front against Georgia in that SEC championship game. And I don't know that a 2-week break is enough for them to fix the running game. And if they can't run the ball, Oklahoma's great at stopping the run. And you put all that pressure on Ty Simpson at the quarterback position. I just think that all plays into Oklahoma's hands, being at home with that defense and Alabama's particular offensive issues. I really think Oklahoma's going to do it again.
Speaking of, it's hard to beat the same team twice in the same season. I don't think that logic necessarily applies to Tulane Ole Miss, or at least we're not applying that logic to Tulane Ole Miss. But I did pick yesterday on our Thirst Trap Thursday, our trap games of the week. I picked Tulane to beat Ole Miss. What do you think about it? Does Tulane have the opportunity to do the unthinkable and upset the Rebs this weekend?
I think it's going to be really hard. And look, we don't know what we're going to get out of Ole Miss. They've been through, since the last time we saw them on the football field, an incredibly disruptive transition from Lane Kiffin to Pete Golding, staff members going in and out, players I'm sure thinking about and evaluating their future. Like, it's not the ideal weeks of preparation that you'd have for a playoff game if everything was just calm and normal. But at the same time, Tulane is kind of going through a lot of the same stuff. I mean, John Summerall is headed to Florida after Tulane gets eliminated, and there's no doubt he's spent a significant portion of his time the last couple of weeks getting everything lined up with his staff and the transfer portal and recruiting to optimize his first few weeks full-time at Florida. So, you've got a distracted head coach versus a guy in Pete Golding who's making his head coaching debut in a college football playoff game. I mean, that's not something we've ever seen before. So how all that's going to shake out, I don't know. I'll just default to this. Ole Miss has way better players, and I kind of typically like the team with better players.
I mean, I think Ole Miss wins this game, but also as an agent of chaos. If they don't, the yellers and screamers about the college football calendar are only going to get worse. A&M Miami, I feel like the whole world's forgotten that A&M and Miami actually play this weekend. What do you see there?
This is a real referendum game, I think, on A&M season, because as good as they've been, it really did sort of end on a sour note with that performance on the day after Thanksgiving at Texas. They got beat up pretty good in the second half of that game. And you start to go back through the schedule. They had the big win over Notre Dame early in the year on the road, 1-point game, which, by the way, Notre Dame lost on a missed extra point. So, good for A&M for going to South Bend and getting that win. That propelled their whole season forward. But after that, their SEC schedule was kind of a joke. I mean, they played all of the bottom feeder teams in the league, and they weren't always impressive in those games. So this result, as far as I'm concerned, is going to define whether A&M was kind of a paper tiger this year or whether or not they were legitimately a top 5 team. We'll find out. They get the game at home. Miami's capable, more than capable from a personnel standpoint, of winning this. And, Mario Cristobal, interesting situation at Miami too. I mean, they've won games since he's been the head coach, a lot of games, but they really haven't won big games. And there's been a lot of spotlight on his game day coaching, which is well deserved. They often are a bit of a mess in game management, and they don't always show up to play. So I think both teams really kind of need this as kind of a validation of their season, and I think probably A&M being at home in Kyle Field gets that done for them.
Yeah, it's going to be such a crazy environment. The fact that we get a playoff game at Kyle Field, injected into my veins. I'm so here for it. Oregon JMU. I'm already looking ahead to Oregon Texas Tech. Call me wrong for that, so be it. What do you think we can learn in this matchup, JMU Oregon?
Yeah, well, I think Dan Lanning, if you think back to last year when they were the number 1 seed coming off the Big Ten championship, and they went out to the Rose Bowl and they got boat raced by Ohio State in the quarterfinals. And it was a very abrupt end to their college football playoff. And they blamed, I don't know about if blamed is the right word, but they certainly felt at Oregon like having the bye week and basically taking the whole month of December off kind of didn't allow them to stay as sharp as they needed to be. They were playing an Ohio State team that kind of got rolling in the first round of the playoff against Tennessee and carried the momentum into the quarterfinal. And I think that is going to inform a lot of how Oregon approaches this postseason. And I think Lanning is looking to use this game as a sharpener, to be absolutely as up to the task as they can be going across the country to Miami in the Orange Bowl to play a Texas Tech team that will kind of have that same issue that Oregon had last year. So I think they're going to put the pedal to the metal. Maybe if they get a big enough lead, maybe they kind of put the backups in the fourth quarter. But I just think they're going to try to put a good performance on the field, do what they need to do to win the game, get guys reps, get them sharp, and then carry that forward into the Orange Bowl to try to turn the tables on what happened last year.
Dan, as always, we appreciate it. When you become the czar of college football and you handle all the collective bargaining for everybody, could you also make sure that we get rid of neutral site games until the championship? I don't care about history. I just want to see home games throughout the course of the playoffs. If you could do that, and you could call that the Yahoo Sports Daily rule, I'm sure college football fans wouldn't lose their minds over that. Merry Christmas, happy holidays, brother. We really appreciate you hanging out with us. Hope you and your family have a great holiday. Thanks for hanging out. We'll see you again soon, bud.
Thanks, y'all. Happy holidays.
Great stuff.
Thanks, Dan.
Wolken,
appreciate it.
As always, I just want no neutral site games. All right, coming up, things we want. Can't wait. Going to come up. We'll get you some of the best games in the NFL over the weekend. It's Friday, and you know what that means. It's time for Can't Wait, where we're going to go through some of the biggest games of the weekend, and we're going to let you know exactly what they are. This is where we invoke the spirit of Bart Scott, and we figure out how we can make Bart a part of the show, even if he's not on the show right now. We're doing it. We're bringing in his spirit because we're going to give you a game, and then we're going to figure out if it's a Bart, and if it's a Bart, that means we can't wait for it, and you will hear a sound effect. God, well, it sounds like this. Can't wait. Yay! Now, what's the opposite of a Bart? Well, clearly, opposite of a Bart is a fart. That's a game we don't want to hear, want to see. Sound we don't want to hear, but it'll sound like this. And then we're off. All right, so I'll give you the game. We figure out if it's a Bart or a fart. We start with the Eagles or the Commanders. What do you think?
I'm gonna call this game a Bart.
Can't wait.
So one of two things can happen. Either the Eagles absolutely, positively clobber, demolish, and destroy the Commanders, and that'll be kind of fun to watch, right? Great team, dominating a bad team. Love to see it. And if they don't, if it's a close game, if the Eagles lose this game, well, then we can all point our fingers and make fun at the Eagles, and that's kind of fun too. They've been such a soap opera. They've been like a Lifetime movie this year. This team has been so dramatic this year. So if we get AJ Brown tweets, AJ Brown reading a book on the sidelines because he can't even get a target against the lousy, crappy Commanders, well, then that's going to be funny. So either way, whether the Eagles dominate or if the Eagles struggle, we're going to get good content out of it. And for that, that's a Bart.
Oh, my friend, I think you only said that because you didn't want to hear the appropriate sound effect. This game is through and through a fart. That's right. Look, to your point, what we're going to get probably is an ugly, disjointed offense from Philly that reminds us that they're not really fixed. They just played the Raiders last week, and then they're going to play a Washington team that has nothing to play for at this point against Marcus Mariota. And all of a sudden, we're going to be sitting there saying, how is this game as close as it's supposed to be when both of these teams look so trashy? The Commanders are going to find a way to play themselves out of it. The Eagles are going to get the win. Yet on Monday, everybody's going to say, is Philly really okay? They didn't look good enough against the Commanders. This is all going to come from the massive fart known as this game. Like, I get the rivalry. I get the fact that, all right, two big brands in the NFC East. I get the fact that people love to watch it. This is not going to be a watchable game. How about this one? How about Chargers, Cowboys? What do you got on this one?
This one's a Bart for sure.
Can't wait.
And it's not going to be a Bart because it's going to be good quality football. I think it's going to be a Bart because it's going to be total and complete chaos, right? An offensive line that cannot keep Justin Herbert upright. And look, both of these teams are still grasping onto their playoff lives. Like we want to leave them for dead so badly, but we're still hearing a little blip on the heart monitor, like boop, boop, boop. That's both of these teams. But I'm not necessarily totally inspired by either of these teams. Like, the Chargers offensive line is absolutely terrible. They cannot run the football. The Cowboys defense is not very good. So it's just a lot of chaos surrounding this game, but a lot on the line. So I'm here for it.
So there is still a chance, full Dumb and Dumber. There's still a chance for the Cowboys to make the playoffs. This game is a part. This game might be a double part. I'm in on this all the way. This game, because, look, the Cowboys have to win out, and the Eagles have to lose out, and then the Cowboys make the playoffs. Now, the Eagles have 2 games remaining against the Commanders this year. So
could happen.
I don't think there's much of a chance. But if we're being honest, at least there is some mathematical opportunity for the Cowboys to make the playoffs. We're going to see the Cowboys fighting for their dear lives. And this is a Chargers team that we're going to have to take seriously at some point. I mean, my God, all they do is continually find a way to win these games. And as banged up as they've been on the offensive line, and as many times as I've tried to leave them for dead, they are 10-4. So, yeah, like watching the Cowboys play against what I think is a better team right now in the Chargers, but also seeing how the Chargers respond with all of the injuries, definitely. I can't wait. How about Vikings-Giants? Bart or a fart for Vikings-Giants?
Beauty is in the eye of the beholder, Fitz. So, Bart.
Can't wait.
We get 2 young quarterbacks. We get a rookie in Jackson Dart. We get J.J. McCarthy. He's not a rookie, but he's a rookie. Like, this is his rookie season, essentially. And we saw J.J. McCarthy absolutely pop off last week. What if we see it again? What if we start to see JJ McCarthy piecing these pieces together? And then I always love watching Jackson Dart. He's always a fun time. So this is a young quarterback, Bart. Two bad teams that have literally nothing to play for, whose seasons are done, who already have their flights to Cancun booked. But we get two young quarterbacks. I'll take that.
Yeah. I think you were just very afraid of the sound because you're right. This is two good quarterbacks. It's two young quarterbacks. There's a lot to learn in this game. You can still learn a lot in a fart. Things I never thought I'd say on TV. You can learn a lot from a fart. I want to buy into all of this. And the funny thing is, sweeping narratives will be made, but the reality of it is, the Vikings this year at 6-8 are still wildly disappointing. Wildly disappointing. The growth of JJ is something to keep an eye on, and it is getting better. And I think having a little patience for somebody that has barely played any football is important. So maybe everybody got off the ship, myself included, too quickly with JJ McCarthy. There's always something you can learn about JJ, but you're learning against the Giants defense that is, let's say, uninspired, because that's the polite way to say crummy, crappy about a bunch of men that are just playing like they don't care anymore. So I will call them uninspired. And look, Jackson Dart has played well, but it hasn't resulted in wins, obviously, for the Giants. Win-win for the Giants. They just want to get the first pick in the draft. But the Giants are 2-12 right now, have nothing to play for. I just don't know when the week is that we're going to tune in and all of a sudden we're going to get nothing. Also, I mean, are we still do you find yourself, let me ask it this way, worried about Jackson Dart at all, given the fact that last week he was taken off the field for concussion examination on a play that didn't even look like it impacted his head? It feels like the league is concerned about the concussions for Jackson Dart right now.
Yes, I am wildly concerned. I am 1,000% concerned. I'll go back to that Patriots game on Thursday Night Football. It all runs together. Jackson Dart, all he needed to do was just run out of bounds. Get out of bounds. But he wanted to be Superman. He wanted to pick up the extra yard, and he got absolutely blown up because of it. And then the Giants got slapped with a 15-yard penalty because the Giants sideline started a fight with that Patriots player. I believe Christian Ellis, I don't know. It all runs together. They started a fight for that hit, which was a totally clean and fair hit. It was a big hit. I mean, Jackson Dart's legs were all sprawled out, but it was a totally fair hit. As a quarterback, you have to know when to hold them, when to fold them. You have to learn how to protect yourself, because protecting yourself means protecting your coaches, ownership, your GM, because the Giants have their entire future tied up into that man right there. The success and failures of the Giants organization revolves around the success and failures of Jackson Dart. And he cannot help this organization if he's sitting on the sidelines in concussion protocol. So yes, I'm concerned about the concussions, and I'm concerned about the fact that it doesn't feel like Jackson Dart has learned how to peel back a little bit and to protect himself. I think that should be one of the number one priorities of this next Giants coaching staff, whoever it might be, is yes, you want to find someone that can kind of, even out the rough edges in Jackson Dart's game. You don't want to take what makes him great away from him, but learn how to protect himself. And I think it needs to be someone that is able to, kind of take Jackson Dart along slowly and teach him how he can protect himself. So yes, 1,000% I'm worried about him. Don't take the dumb hits.
Let me talk into this one. Chiefs-Titans. Let me tell you why Chiefs-Titans is a Bart,
No,
okay? Chiefs-Titans is a Bart. You know why it's a Bart?
Wait.
I'm going to pop my popcorn. I'm going to sit down on the couch. I'm just going to eat it, watch it the whole time, giggling. How's it feel, Kansas City? Can't make playoffs now, can you? Oh, can't make playoffs now. Oh, season is over. Not going to have to watch you in the postseason. Not going to have to watch the Kool-Aid man come running through the postseason door skin. Oh, yeah. Not going to have to do that, Andy Reid. No playoffs for Kansas City. Makes this watchable in and of itself. Yeah, I am troll watching this game just to watch the sad tears of Kelsey realizing that he ain't going to the playoffs in what is likely his last season. Did I talk you into it, or are you still on the fart train?
This is the shartiest fart that there ever was. This game is disgusting. This game is terrible. It's gonna be Cam Ward. Oh, this is if there was a Bart of farts, this would be it. This would be the king of farts. We have Cam Ward and Gardner Minshew. That's disgusting. Two teams that have nothing to play for. Ew. And don't take my word for it. I got a notification from ticket app. I won't tell you what it is. No free publicity around here. That the prices for the Titans Chiefs game went down, and I thought, yeah, I'm sure they did. So I just, for funsies, for S's and G's, pulled up what it would cost to get to this game. If you want to sit at the 50-yard line in the front section, the first section of Nissan Stadium, that's going to cost you a big ol' $130. $130 to sit in the front row on the 50-yard line. So you know what? Maybe this is a BART. This is a BART for the wallets of every Titans fan in Nashville to say, hey, we get to watch the Kansas City Chiefs for a get-in price of like $20. So you know what? Invite your friends, invite your kids' friends, invite your parents, invite your in-laws, invite everybody to this game because it's going to be the cheapest ticket probably this weekend in the NFL.
By the way, fun fact I discovered on social media from Paul Kuharski, who does a great job covering the team. PK pointed out that the Titans sold this game, the Chiefs, as part of a premier package. You had to do extra. You couldn't buy this game as a standalone preseason. It was sold as the premier game of the regular season. Patrick Mahomes coming to Nashville. Mistakes were made. Steelers Lions, we both agree is a Bart, right? We're all in. Steelers Lions, Bart.
All in on this one. Give it to me. This is a BART.
Okay, there we go. That's fine. Look, that one's too easy. Yeah, there's too much. Yeah, had to end on a BART instead of on the Bart of farts, as she said, or the shardiest of all of the farts we've ever had. That's electric. The kind of content you only get on Yahoo Sports Daily. We could raise a banner for it. Speaking of banners, coming up next, we'll figure out whether or not you should raise a banner for the NBA Cup. And let me tell you, the answer is not as simple as you think it might be. Hall of Famer Kevin Garnett is reuniting with the Minnesota Timberwolves and the Lynx in a new role that will involve business, community efforts, and content development. Per Shams, Garnett played 14 of his 21 NBA seasons in Minnesota. This is where Caroline Fenton and I get to sing Reunited and It Feels So Good. I'm not sure we have the rights to do that, so we can't do any more than that. Garnett and the franchise will hold a jersey retirement ceremony within the next 2 seasons. It's a big deal because Garnett had been distant from the Wolves ever since his playing career ended. He had a fallout with the ex-owner. This has been well documented. Now the Wolves have new owners, and all of a sudden everything feels like it's come back. I think this is important, Caroline. Like, I just think you have to, especially for franchises that have particular legends that are faces of the league for their chapters. I just think for what it means for the community, for what it means for generational fandom, for what it means to just be at events where like kids and their parents go and their parents are like, oh, that was my favorite player. Like, I think there's more importance to this than just a sort of a little bit of a moment where you say, okay, we're going to do this as a shtick. Like, I think this is actually important for Minnesota.
It does. It's a full circle moment. And especially, I think, for mid-market or small market teams, I'm speaking from somebody who is from a city that is a small market or a mid-market, that there's so much connection that the people of that city have to those sports teams and have to the greats of those sports teams. So for Kevin Garnett to be able to come back and serve in this role and to really bury all of the hatchets that have happened in throughout history that you just pointed out, and to be able to be not just a legend of the game, not just a jersey that everybody wears walking around, not just a retired number, but to be an active member of the team again, I think it's very special, especially for the Minnesota Timberwolves that don't have the most storied history. They aren't the sexiest franchise in the NBA. Nobody's looking around saying, ooh, I need a team. You know who I'm going to pick? Minnesota Timberwolves. But you know who is passionate about the Minnesota Timberwolves? Minnesota Timberwolves fans. So to be able to have that connection to the face of the franchise, the most storied player in their history, I think is the very thing. It makes me think about the Patriots and how badly I want Bill Belichick and Robert Kraft to just bury all of the hatchets so they can just rejoice in all of the good and the championships and the bright spot in their franchise's history, so we can just move past all the other stuff, all the other extracurriculars.
Yeah, it's just a reminder that at the core, sports serve fans. The best organizations serve fans. And when you bring your legends back, you serve your fans. I'll never forget my first week when I was working at ESPN and I had moved to Connecticut, and I walked into what they call the war room where all the NFL people were watching the games in Bristol. And I walked in and I sat down and I looked at the chair next to me, and Charles Woodson was sitting there. And as a lifelong diehard Raiders fan, I just sat there and thought, oh my God, I'm sitting next to Charles Woodson. Now I'm lucky to get to do this for a living still to this day. But for every single fan that chooses to spend money on Minnesota and on the Timberwolves, just the chance to be out and about and interact with Garnett is something that matters. It's good on them for figuring out how to build the bridge and reconnect, because I think it's a win for everybody. We'll use that to get into some of what we like to do on the show that we call triple threat. All right, this is where we'll give you a concept, a take, a thought, and we're going to do one of three things with it. We're going to shoot it, we're going to pass it, we're going to dribble it. So if we love it, we're going to shoot it. If we don't love it, we're going to pass it. And if we just want a little bit more time to figure it out, we're going to dribble it. We'll take a look at three different storylines. So shoot, pass, or dribble in honor of what we just saw from KG. Anthony Edwards will finish ahead of Garnett as the best Wolves player of all time. Will you shoot, pass, or dribble that?
I'm going to dribble that. And the reason why is because if I'm shooting on that, I think I'm getting way, 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 way ahead of my skis, right? Anthony Edwards is young. He has a long career ahead of him. And there is a lot more winning that the Minnesota Timberwolves need to do in order for Ant to overtake. We just got done talking about KG as being the most revered Timberwolf in the entire franchise's history. So Ant's not there yet. But the reason why I'm not passing on that is because I definitely think he has the opportunity to. The charisma, the fact that he is, becoming a celebrity, he's superseding just basketball circles, and also what he does on the court, I think he definitely has the opportunity to. I'm just not going to get ahead of myself here. I'll let Ant tell us if he is going to be known as the greatest Minnesota Timberwolf of all time. He's just not there quite yet. Let's give it some time.
So I think dribble is the right answer on this because, frankly, a couple of things. I mean, Garnett has an MVP, right? And Anthony Edwards clearly does not right now. But the other part of it is, how do we define best or greatest for a franchise? I immediately think if you had to pick one player, if we're going best, then the question to me is if I could only pick one player in my entire team's history to build a statue of outside of the arena, which player would it be? Well, you can't tell the story of the NBA during Kevin Garnett's career without saying the name Kevin Garnett. It transcended far above just the Minnesota Timberwolves and went into the lore of all of the NBA, went into the lore of pop culture. It just became iconic. There's just a a different level of celebrity status to greatness that really identifies with the player and identifies with the team through all of that. Anthony Edwards has been very good. He's been great. He's been sensational. He hasn't even been the best player in the league at any one given point right now, right? There's so much talent around the league that is still so good and is still rising to be so good. I think he has a tremendous opportunity to cement himself in that conversation. But to do that, he'd have to become an MVP. To do that, he would have to be the face of the league, because it is not like, and Kevin Garnett was one of the faces of the NBA in his generation without question. So while he can be great statistically and his production can be through the roof, I think you have to transcend. You have to cross over. You have to become something larger than just the best player on your team, and you have to become larger than life if you want to eclipse the shadow that Kevin Garnett puts when you say his name. So I think dribble is the right answer. Let's try this one. Let's see if we shoot past or dribble this. The Clippers will follow the Wolves' lead and eventually squash the beef with CP3 and retire his jersey. What do you think?
I'm going to dribble on that. This made me do a whole lot of thinking. The gears were turning. I'm going to dribble on that. I'm not 1,000% sure that the Clippers will memorialize CP3 forever just because of what we just saw. They just left him in Atlanta, basically just left him for dead. But Chris Paul is arguably the greatest player in the history of the Clippers organization. We talk about Blake Griffin and Lob City. Like, Chris Paul was the focal point of the brightest spot in the Clippers' history as an organization. And yes, it ended badly. And yes, there's bad blood. But I think time heals a lot of things. And I think in the next few years, the Clippers will be able to take a step back and say, we need to honor Chris Paul for what he brought to this franchise and to this organization. I also think that'll speak volumes for the Clippers PR. I've said on this show several times, and I believe it wholeheartedly, that the way the Clippers did Chris Paul so dirty, looked so bad and petty on the Clippers organization. Now, it's fair to say that CP3 probably had that coming to him. The way that he was acting, the way that he was just more of a distraction than he was a benefit on the court. But I still don't think that that's how you conduct business with your players. As big of a pain in the butt as he probably was, and it sounds like he was, you don't do that to a guy that brought so much good to your organization. So I think, like, if I'm a player in the NBA, if I'm a free agent and I'm looking around, I'm like, I'm not going there. I saw how they treated Blake Griffin. I saw how they treated Chris Paul. So I think just to do a little bit of reputation rehabilitation, the Clippers should swallow their pride and honor Chris Paul the way that he should be honored. I just don't know, with everything being so new and so fresh and the relationship being as severed as it feels like it is, that they will be able to get to that point. I hope that they do.
Look, I hope you're right, but I pass on the take that this will happen. And part of the reason I pass, like, if you've ever met anybody in your life that's gone through a 12-step program, step 9 is to make amends, right? So the concept of making amends is sitting down and saying, hey, here are the things that I did. The part that we don't always acknowledge in that is that you can't force the other side to accept those amends. You can't force a side to accept an apology. I think at some point, you're very right that the Clippers could go to Chris Paul and say, hey, we want to do the retirement video. We want to put your jersey in the rafters. You deserve to have all of these accolades. The question is, will Chris Paul accept that apology and choose the olive branch, choose to accept the olive branch? I don't know. The way all of this has gone down now, and it's been so loud and it's been so vocal, and he's been sent home, and we still don't know exactly what's going to happen. Like, every single day that this drags on, the taste in his mouth only gets worse. And so as much as I think it makes sense that at some point the Clippers will extend the olive branch and say, hey, we could have done this better. We owe you an apology. Steve Ballmer, certainly, I don't believe you become a billionaire unless you've at least once or twice in your life made an apology you probably didn't feel like you had to make. Steve Ballmer can certainly do that, right? I think most adults know how to do that. But at some point, will that apology become accepted? And I don't know. If you're Chris Paul, I don't know what the Clippers would have to do to make it right, because you hated the way all of this went down. So I don't share your optimism that it will happen. I pass on it. How about this one? We'll get you another take. We'll look at rafters, all right? Because we all know that the Knicks, they just won the NBA Cup, right? So the question is, when you win the NBA Cup, are you going to raise a banner? A source told the New York Post that the team is, quote, focused on the bigger picture, and they have chosen not to raise a banner on the NBA Cup championship. So will you shoot past or dribble? Was this the right thing for them to do?
I'll shoot on that. That was the right thing to do. Yes. We're talking about the New York Knicks. The Knicks. There's no need to raise a banner for something that's not really real. And look, over the next several years and decades, will the NBA Cup become a bigger deal? I think so. Honestly, with the level of intensity and the level of competition that we saw between the Spurs and the Knicks, like I do think that the NBA has something here with the NBA Cup. I do think that so far I can view it as a success, but it's not a championship. Sure, you get a trophy for it. Sure, you get money for it, but it doesn't mean anything. And I do understand. I see the other side of saying, look, whenever you win something, it should be memorialized and it should be celebrated. And yes, I 1000% agree with that. But what did they win? They didn't win anything. It wasn't a championship. It wasn't a title. We're talking about the New York Knicks, okay? That's a franchise that holds themselves in very high regard. I know that they haven't won a championship since the 70s. I understand that you should celebrate your wins. I get that. I understand that. But you should be putting your franchise at a certain level of saying, we will memorialize the things that matter. Right now, the NBA Cup is fun and all, but it doesn't really matter. I always make fun of Ole Miss. Look, I'll put my, fan hat on. I went to LSU. I always make fun of Ole Miss because in their stadium it says SEC West Champions 2003 because you don't have anything else to celebrate. And that's kind of weak. No, Alabama doesn't do that. Texas A&M doesn't do that, I guess, because they've never won the SEC West. But there are teams that are at the pinnacle of college football that don't celebrate the small wins because they have bigger goals in sight. That's what the Knicks are doing, and I think that's the right move.
So the funny thing is, I have always agreed with you. In fact, when the Lakers talked about the banner for the Cup, I believe I went on there at the time and absolutely eviscerated them for it. So no need to go and find it and point out my hypocrisy. Instead, I'm going to come to everybody and just say, hey, sometimes you rethink things and your mind changes a little bit. My mind has changed on this. And everything you just said, I'll start here, Knicks fans. Hear me out. My right arm, for anyone that's never seen me without sleeves on, is a full sleeve tattoo of everywhere I've ever lived and the moments I'm proudest of in my life. I tell you that right now because one of the things tattooed on my arm is literally the logo for Madison Square Garden. Because when my band had the opportunity to play a sold-out show there, it meant that much to me to play Madison Square Garden. So I understand when everybody says the gravitas of the arena and the Knicks and the brand. I understand all of these things. Where I'm caught on this, and the reason that I don't think it was the right move, is that the league at some point is trying to make the Cup significant. And at some point, everybody has to buy in. Like, if the message from the winning team is, we're not raising a banner. You took the $532,000 per player. So if you took the paycheck, but if you're not willing to raise the banner, you never give it the opportunity to grow to something that becomes that sort of a moment. In 20, 30 years, the NBA wants the NBA Cup to be significant. How do we ever get there if the teams that win it remind us immediately that it's actually not a big deal? By doing that, what they do is they reduce any of our need or impact to want to care about it next year and the year after and the year after. The buy-in exists because everybody wants to get the cash. I understand that. But above and beyond that, if you want eventually league-wide fan base, you want the world to stop and say, oh my God, the NBA Cup championship is tonight. I have to watch that. In order for that to happen, teams are going to have to start taking it seriously. That trophy is going to have to mean something. A banner, as insignificant as it might be to some people, is going to have to be raised. Otherwise, I'm not sure we ever actually take the jump and make the Cup meaningful. Also, again, with love and respect to Madison Square Garden, which is tattooed on my body, you currently have banners up there for Billy Joel, which is fine. Billy Joel's a legend. Okay. You have banners up there for Fish. Oh, okay. Fish is a great band. You have a banner
Fish
up there for Harry Styles. Harry Styles has a banner in Madison Square Garden.
Don't say it like that.
Straight nights sold out in 2022.
He's a pop icon.
I love Harry Styles music. In 50 years, are people going to, like, for anyone that's never been to the Garden, the coolest thing, when I played it with the band and I walked everybody around the concourse, just looking at the glass cases and saying, oh my God, those are the trunks that Hulk Hogan wore in WrestleMania. Like, you can go through and you can find all of these. This is the jersey that was worn during the Jordan game here. Like, there's all of these great moments that are just encapsulated throughout the entire arena that really showcase the history of MSG and what makes it special. There's also a Harry Styles banner. You got room for an NBA Cup banner. I don't know how we ever make it matter if it doesn't matter to the teams that win it. I'm just evolving. I'm changing my mind. All right, so closing thoughts, Caroline?
I do wonder if there's some mental games at play here for the Knicks, though. If at the end of the season or over the next couple of years, they do end up hanging a banner, I do wonder if Mike Brown looks at it and says, we're not going to raise a banner right now because we haven't done anything this season to prove to his team that, look, that winning this is great and all, and it is a wonderful feather in our cap, and it's proof of where we are as a team right now. But our greatest goal has yet to be achieved. So we're not going to throw a parade. We're not going to raise a banner because we haven't done anything yet. I wonder if there's some sports psychology at play here.
You're absolutely right. I see both sides on this. I absolutely see both sides on it. It'd be interesting to see if Adam Silver ever stands in and says, hey, you no longer have a choice. That might be the only way that this issue gets solved. Speaking of solving issues, we have new updates in the WNBA and their possible strike coming up. We'll tell you about it next.
Breaking, the WNBPA announced that players voted to authorize its executive committee to call a strike, quote, when necessary, as a response to the current state of CBA negotiations with the league. 98% of the players voted yes, 93% participated in the vote per the union. That is the latest in the WNBA CBA negotiations as we welcome you back into Yahoo Sports Daily. Jason Fitz, Caroline Fenton hanging out with you. So what I would like to just state for the record, this does not mean that the WNBPA is striking. This does not mean that the players currently are striking. This just means that the players have approved, if and when it does become necessary, that the WNBA players need to strike, or the Players Association needs to strike, that they have approved that they will when it's necessary. Let's remember that the current negotiations have been extended until January 9th. So they do have some time to get this worked out. This does not mean that a strike is inevitable, Fitz, but what it does mean is that the WNBA players are prepared to strike. They're ready to strike if it does get to this point. So my question for you is, Fitzy, what does this mean for you as we kind of navigate the WNBA CBA negotiations? What does this tell you about where we are?
The players are galvanized. Right. And I think that, so the two numbers that stood out to me on this is that 93% of the players voted and 98% of those voted that they were comfortable with the strike. That isn't over for anyone that's never covered or kept an eye on collective bargaining. Those are overwhelming percentages that we rarely see in most sports leagues because, as I've referenced before with you, Caroline, there are thousands of people in the NFL Players Association, right? The numbers are much smaller in the WNBA. So what we're finding out is that because there's less players and these players are banded together, they are voting, and they are voting loud, and they are voting with an overwhelming confidence. That is unusual. I think it's almost unprecedented to see that level of participation in a vote that clearly says, nah, we're good. We're ready to sit out if that's what it means. That to me speaks to the most dangerous part of this if you were a WNBA fan, which is I believe the players are wildly galvanized together in just what right or wrong. It feels like if you are a woman in sports, you rarely just get to play your sport. You also have to be an advocate for the future of your sport because you're fighting from the day you get in to do this professionally. I think we get the note here from the WNBA the WNBPA, I should say, that they are ready for a fight and they are ready to stand together for the future of the game.
1000%. This is the most galvanized I have ever seen a professional sports league and its individual players. And we've heard it so much from not just players that are part of the Players Association, but players across the league. And they've all reiterated the same sentiment. This is the most pivotal moment in the history of the WNBA. And it is. We've never seen more eyeballs on the sport. We've never seen more investment into the sport. We have never seen more money in the sport. We have never seen the level of popularity that the WNBA is currently experiencing. The players want to capitalize on it. And I do not blame them one slight bit. I do not blame the players for saying this is the perfect moment for us to advocate for ourselves, to get what we feel like we deserve, to get the fraction of the pie that we feel like is fair based on what other professional leagues are getting. They're not asking for the same dollar amount. All they're asking for is the same share. But what's concerning to me is what I get from this latest move, the WNBPA voting almost unanimously that they're prepared to strike, is they're so much further apart than I thought. They are so much further apart in these negotiations than I talked about just a couple of days ago. Cassandra Negley and I did a breakdown on Hoops 360 just a couple of days ago. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts and on the Yahoo Sports YouTube page. Our reaction to some comments that we heard Caitlin Clark say. And, what we're taking away from the things that are coming up in conversation, whether it's housing or maternity leave, it was so many things beyond just rev share. Rev share is the number one thing that is what these negotiations really hinge on. But the more and more that we saw other things come up in conversation led me to believe, okay, we're putting the pieces together. We're getting to a point where we're agreeing here. That this shows me that they're not. The most important thing to me, though, and I will take a quote from Caitlin Clark when she was interviewed at Team USA practices. She said, "It's not something that can be messed up. We're going to fight for everything that we deserve. But at the same time, we need to play basketball. That's it. Point blank, period. Those are the two most important things. We need to get this right because we need to capitalize on the growth that the league is experiencing. But at the end of the day, basketball is the most important thing. We need to play basketball. So if a strike is looming, if a strike is inevitable, which I'm not sure it is inevitable, but if a strike is looming, the most important thing is we don't miss basketball games. The most important thing is the season goes on without a hitch. I'll go back to the 1994 Major League Baseball strike, where there's no World Series in 1994. That did so much damage to Major League Baseball. We're talking about the MLB over here. That did so much damage that didn't really get recuperated until 1998, the long gone summer when you had Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa and you had the home run record race. It took several years and all-stars, superstars, celebrities of the game both vying for this record for Major League Baseball to really kind of get back to 100% health. If the WNBA misses games, if the draft gets pushed back, if the season is shortened, that will do irreparable damage to a league that is on the precipice of a serious breakthrough. So I want the players to get what they want. I am proud of the WNBPA for fighting for what they feel they deserve. But at the same time, to protect the league, to protect the future of this league, and to protect the investments that have been made into women's sports, into women's basketball, you have to play basketball games. This season cannot be affected.
This is where, again, there's there's nuance and gray to so much of this conversation, right? And I want to stress that because I think a lot of people yelling right now aren't giving you any of the nuance of the gray. Part of what's difficult here, because everything you just said is so wildly true, what's difficult are the people that with a very, very loud voice that are ready to say the worst things possible that don't care about the sport. Like the disingenuous voices are a real factor. And you don't want them to be like, I don't deal in shoulds. I deal in actualities. Like for me as a person, I look at some accepted inevitabilities and just say, okay, right or wrong. I don't really care whether that inevitability is right or wrong. It's simply something we're going to have to deal with. Inevitably, right or wrong, something the WNBA will have to deal with are all of the voices of people that don't consume the product, don't like the product, don't care about the product, but they're ready to trounce on the negative tone of anything that comes around the product. Those voices are going to become so amplified if there's a work stoppage. Those voices, disingenuous, like this is where a lot of people that love the game, and I would count you and I into that category. A lot of people that covered the game are going to yell, well, don't listen to the people that are out here screaming things that don't matter. Don't listen to the people that don't have real intent. Don't listen to the people that are just trying to find a way to bash women's sports. All of these things that, any of us that have covered women's sports for a minute have said, like, you can't stop that right now. So Caroline, to your point, while the players are galvanized and while I want the players to get absolutely everything they can, I do think that the players, everybody, including all the way up to Caitlin Clark, have to realize right now that the inevitability of a work stoppage will be all of the people that have bad intentions, all of the people that aren't in it for the right reasons, all of the people that will never watch a second of WNBA basketball anyway, are going to use a work stoppage as a way to try and make every one of these athletes look like villains. And that narrative, right or wrong, true or false, will get momentum. That's just the way society works. There's literally nothing that can be done to stop the waterfall that will come from a work stoppage from people that have no vested interest one way and the other than just trying to trash the WNBA because they've decided they don't like the product, even if they haven't watched the damn thing. So like everything you just described is the danger of the inevitability of a work stoppage. And it's a really gray area to try and cover and be honest with, but I think it's something that has to be said loudly, Caroline, because it is a factor in the conversation as this moves forward.
It 1,000% is. I go back to Angel Reese pointing to her ring finger in front of Caitlin Clark's face, and that was the number one story on First Take. That was the number one headline of Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark beefing with each other. Can you imagine what the narrative would be? And narratives are important. Okay, we can dismiss them all they want. Narratives and conversation are important when it comes to the court of public opinion. If it'll be painted as the players are greedy, the players care more about money than they care about playing. All of that is total and complete bullcrap, and it's completely unfair. But welcome to life as a woman in women's sports. You do twice as much work to get half as amount of respect, and you have to work your butt off and take less than what you deserve just to avoid any sort of bad publicity. But that's the reality, unfortunately, that the WNBA is facing. I also think that's just the reality of negotiations. Sometimes you get less than what you wanted. Sometimes you have to make concessions that you didn't want to make. But that happens on both sides. Cass made a very, very great point on Hoops 360. She said, if you step away from the negotiating table totally and completely happy, those probably weren't very great negotiations. Good negotiations come from everybody feeling like they got slighted out of something. But that's compromise. That's negotiating. The league needs a little bit of give and take. And the league also is looking out for the well-being of the WNBA, not just the individual players, but the league as a whole. If you're making all of these promises to the players and things that the players want, they feel that they deserve, well, how good is that for the financial health of the league long term? If the league is tying itself up in a certain percentage of money going to the players, well, how does that money contribute to the health of the league moving forward? The league has to protect its assets as well. The league has to make smart financial decisions for themselves. So even if the players step away from the negotiating table feeling they got less than they initially wanted, that might be what it has to take for these negotiations to happen. Not everybody can get everything that they want. And of course, the WNBPA is playing hardball, knowing how important the WNBA knows it is in order to get these negotiations done and to continue the season and the calendar as follows.
Everything you just said, though, about the league, I would also say respectfully about Caitlin Clark in this situation. Like you mentioned her statement of like, hey, we need to fight for everything, but we have to play basketball. I think Caitlin's done a really nice job so far of staying as neutral in all of this as she can, backing her teammates, but also making sure that she keeps everything in her life sort of as straight and narrow as possible. It goes back to the old Michael Jordan when he says Republicans buy shoes too, right? Like there's this moment of we don't want athletes to take sides where they don't have to take sides because we don't want to see them alienate an audience that would support them. Caitlin is in a very difficult and interesting situation because there is no voice more powerful in the WNBA than Caitlin Clark. There are very few voices in all of sports that carry more equity to the brand of the sport that they play than Caitlin Clark. The problem is so much of that voice is built on the money she makes in endorsements and on the money that she makes as being Caitlin Clark, not just the WNBA player, but Caitlin Clark, the sports personality, that she's got to walk a very fine line. I am genuinely interested to see if she can go through this entire process walking that fine line. Can she stay unscathed? Because in many sports you can. In many sports, the biggest star of your sport can sort of hide behind being neutral on as much as possible because there are so many other athletes within the sport that are lifting the voice up of everybody, and you can be one of many. In the W, there's one of one when it comes to Caitlin Clark. Can she make it through this entire negotiation process without truly coming out and taking a wildly harsh stance, a know my worth sort of line in the sand, we won't, I won't, they won't stance? If she can do that, kudos to her. But man, all of this gets more difficult for her as it goes on. And I'm not trying to put her in a situation where she has to save the league. I don't think that's fair. But I think inevitably you look at the biggest stars and you say to the biggest stars, hey, you got the most to gain and the most to lose, and your voice has the most weight. What are you going to do with it? It will be interesting to see how Caitlin plays that game.
And Caitlin doesn't want to be in the spotlight. Like, that's not her personality. All of the spotlight
may not have a
that
choice
she
here,
has,
though.
I know, but I'm saying like all the spotlight she has is been given to her because of who she is as a player. She doesn't want to be the kind of person that everybody goes to of, Caitlin, what do you think of the negotiations? She doesn't want to be the kind of person that makes some sort of bold headline kind of statement surrounding the CBA. She's been in the league for 2 years. She's what, 23, 24 years old? She's been in the league for 2 years. She's still figuring out the inner machinations of the WNBA. That's why it's great that we have advocates for the league like Nneka Ogwumike and Nafisa Collier and Brianna Stewart, veterans in this league who have experienced pre-growth WNBA, post-growth WNBA. They understand. I mean, Brianna Stewart and Nafisa Collier have a league of their own. They're the authors and the brain trust of Unrivaled. They know how these things work. So I think it's also important, although Caitlin Clark's words bear a lot of weight, it's important to understand that Caitlin Clark's still figuring out how the league works just like we all are.
You are correct. But if every other athlete you just mentioned, some of whom I'm friends with, came together and made a massive statement about the WNBA, it would get covered by ESPN and by Yahoo Sports and places like that. If Caitlin Clark came out and made a massive statement, it's the headline on TMZ. And that's just a different level of popularity that comes with it. We'll keep you updated as we get more information on this. The story's not going anywhere, and we're just hoping that they find a quick resolution that ends up being right for everybody. In the meantime, we're going to make some big predictions coming up next. What do the Monday headlines, including that man's fate at Bama, all look like? We'll tell you. That, kids, is what we like to call a newspaper. And those are called newspaper headlines. This is where we give you Monday headlines today. She's Caroline Fenton. I'm Jason Fitz. We're going to give you some weekend predictions. All right, Caroline. So we give you weekend predictions in the form of headlines from the newspaper on Monday morning. And then we'll see how we go. I'll go first here. All right, you ready for this? This is my Monday morning headline, and believe me, I'm going big because I got to sell newspapers, and that's hard to do in the modern society. How about this? We're going to get some Alabama-based here. Bama bounced. DeBoer goes blue. That's right, Alabama. How you like this? In order to get this, I need all of this to happen in a big way. So the Tide get rolled by 3 touchdowns. How do you like this? Oklahoma just absolutely throttles Alabama. All of a sudden, by the end of Saturday, we hear the rumors everywhere. By Sunday morning, we find out Michigan has targeted him. By the time we get to air Monday morning, Kalen DeBoer is the new head coach of Michigan, and Alabama is hunting for their own football coach. Oh, Al is disappointed. Everybody's in shock and awe. Miss Betty's calling in to Feinbaum to apologize for trying to use the lottery buyout on DeBoer, and Bama fans are losing their mind. Are you buying my newspaper?
I mean, Bama bounced, DeBoer goes blue. Sounds like a headline that would come up during like a presidential election. I'm buying this. I'm so buying this. I am smelling what you're stepping in. I am picking up what you're dropping. I'm loving this. Yeah. Smell that. It smells like DeBoer going to Michigan. I don't think that it's a funny little coincidence that Kalen DeBoer's name continues to pop up in some of these coaching searches. I mean, his name was aligned so closely with the Penn State coaching search that he had to address it in a press conference. That's not by accident. We keep hearing Kalen DeBoer's name in the Michigan coaching search. That is not by accident. That has to come from something that's not just totally and completely baseless. I do think there's a little bit of truth to Kalen DeBoer is miserable being in the Tuscaloosa Fishbowl. I mean, there is maybe a little bit of truth to Kalen DeBoer is looking around like, I'm in the college football playoff. We went 10-2, lost to a dominant Georgia team in the SEC championship game, and people want me fired. Like, people are upset with me because in my first year I went 9-3, in my second year I went 10-2 and got this team in the playoff. Like, what more do you want from me, people? There is a amount of spotlight that's on an Alabama head football coach. There is a certain amount of pressure that comes from being the guy that follows the guy, which is exactly what Kalen DeBoer is following up Nick Saban, that might be a little bit miserable. So I buy into this. If Bama gets absolutely throttled by Oklahoma, I don't think that's going to happen. I also didn't think Alabama would get throttled by Georgia, and they did. But if they do, I do think we might see Kalen DeBoer as the next head coach at Michigan. And can you imagine the craziness on top of the craziness that we've already seen in the coaching carousel? If Kalen DeBoer leaves from Michigan and we have an Alabama vacancy, chaos.
That's the conspiracy theorist in me, which is very, very small part of my body, says, all right, we've been hearing for how long that Kenny Dillingham is working on an extension with Arizona State. Like, if he was going to sign that extension to avoid Michigan, could have already done it. If he's waiting on that extension because he's headed to Bama. Oh, all right, Caroline, give me your Monday headline today.
Okay, I'm going to transition to the NFL. Everybody's high on the Patriots. Everybody loves Drake May. Happy Bakemas to Ann Michael May. But what nobody's talking about is how the Ravens are silently behind closed doors looking like a better football team. So my Monday headline is the Ravens
news updates.
Take down the Patriots. Quaff the Ravens, never may. It's very poetic and very lovely. Thank you, Edgar Allan Poe. I think there's this storybook fairy tale year that has been the New England Patriots. I say life is never that easy in the NFL. And it's never so easy as to have the greatest quarterback of all time win 6 Super Bowls. You go through 4 years of suck, and then now all of a sudden you have Tom Brady reincarnated. No. It's never that easy. So I think the Ravens, with the defense getting better, I think Derrick Henry's been running the rock better. Lamar Jackson doesn't look like peak Lamar Jackson, but Lamar Jackson does look like he's getting right. I think the Ravens make a statement on Sunday and take down the Patriots. What are we thinking?
I don't
buying what I'm selling?
I don't just want this newspaper. I need this newspaper. Like, just from the general concept of the chaos presented by Baltimore getting hot at the end of the season, which then gives us our inevitable, well, nobody wants to face the Ravens in the playoffs combo, which is great. And then we can all of a sudden pile on to yet again, the Patriots can't beat anybody. Look, my favorite football team is too terrible for me to have any animosity in my heart. I do not hate any other football team because my team's not important enough for me to hate any team. Patriots fans, I need you to lose. It's just not fair. Like, I'm just going to be honest. Like, I just look at it and like a petulant child pitching a fit in the corner, I say it's not fair for the Patriots to be this good again suddenly and to look like they've got it all figured out for the next decade. I just don't want that to be the case. I'm past the point of trying to break it down. I'm past the point of trying to raise reasonable questions on the Patriots. I'm just going to be an unreasonable, pouty child, and I'm going to tell you that it's not fair. And so I need the Ravens to go in and just absolutely shamack all the Patriots around so that for at least a week I can be like, you can't have all that much joy. Like, the Patriots going out and winning the Super Bowl this year is a great story. Sure. I don't want it. I just don't want it. So there we go. That's my adult analysis of it. I love the headline by you. Let me get another headline in. How about this one? We'll stick in the NFL since you went NFL. How about this? We'll go to the Cleveland Browns. I know. What's there going to be a headline about the Browns? Trust me, we're going to get it from Myles Garrett.
What isn't going to be a headline about the Browns?
I know, my God. Like this, for once, I'm going to give you a Browns headline that has nothing to do with Shedeur, though. How about this is Myles Garrett's weekend? We're going to get the new record. That means 95 gets 23. Garrett, the new sack king. 23, 24, might even get more. I need Myles Garrett to go off king in this matchup, and I think he can. Plus, look, how many times have I had to listen to all of this about Strahan setting the sack record when it looks like Favre flopped? I just don't want to hear it anymore. So now all of a sudden, to get the sack record against Josh Allen, like, give it to me that way. Give it to me against one of the biggest stars in the NFL. Give me an epic Josh Allen. He's going to be running around. He's going to be trying to make plays. Josh Allen's going to be trying to find an extra yard. And you know what we're going to get? We're going to get a lame record-setting sack where Allen is running forward, but he's tackled just short of the line of scrimmage. And that's going to be the moment that we realize it happened for Myles Garrett. He sets the sack record and becomes the new king.
If he doesn't do it against Josh Allen, he has an opportunity to do it against Aaron Rodgers. That's pretty awesome. Is like, how anticlimactic would it be if it's like, Myles Garrett sacks JJ McCarthy. Sorry, JJ. No disrespect to JJ, but doesn't necessarily have the same kind of juice as Myles Garrett is your new sack king after taking down Josh Allen or Aaron Rodgers. I mean, he's only 1.5 sacks away from breaking the record. He gets 1 sack and he meets the record. So it's going to happen, right? Like, Josh Allen's not an easy guy to take down necessarily. He's slippery and he's mobile and he's a big dude. But 1 sack, at least 1.5, absolutely Myles Garrett could do that. 1,000%. I'm loving this. I hope for Myles Garrett's sake, he does get it. I also think Josh Allen's the kind of personality and the kind of quarterback that would kind of like love that. Like, he'd get sacked and then like give Myles Garrett a high five.
Yeah. Bills fans, watch out. The one thing I can tell you is that when you're part of a historic moment, it means you're going to replay. You're going to see the play over and over and over again for the next 40 years. So you better hope it doesn't happen to your team. Give me another headline. What do you got? Give me one more.
Okay, well, we're on the topic of stifling defenses, or at least a defensive player. My headline is Texans hold them 8 sacks, seal a victory in a Raiders shutout. Fitzy, I am so sorry. I'm so sorry, but this isn't like a Monday headline. This isn't me just like throwing out a zany, crazy prediction. This is like something that I would bet on. This Texans defense against, there it is, that crappy little Raiders offensive line. I know. Give it a hug, because it's not going to be getting a whole lot of love this weekend.
You feel good breaking my heart? Is this what the show is?
I didn't do it. Don't you put this evil on me, Ricky Bobby. This is not my doing.
I mean, this is my life. This is where I am. Like, you feel good. You feel good with my sadness. That's what's going to happen, Caroline. I don't think you're wrong, by the way. I think this could happen, and it's sad. It makes me very, very sad. I don't know. I think
I was going to say 10.
Oh, thank you. Safe. Oh, so we got to 8. We got to 8 is a pity number. We got to 8 is a pity number. That is, oh my God. Look,
I was just being nice.
Thank you so much. I went on record last week saying 35-3 was my final score prediction for the Eagles versus the Raiders. That game was 31-0. I think this game is maybe even worse. Honestly, this Texans team, is absolutely defensively. The glow up over the course of this year has been incredible to watch. To watch this defense play, I really do believe we need to start having a conversation about the Texans and their dominant defense, the same way we talked about the Ravens a generation ago. Like, it's that lofty to me. And then you've got a CJ Stroud that suddenly looks a lot better. Like, it's taken some time, but that offense is starting to gel a little bit. They'll have an opportunity to gel big time against the Raiders. This is all I ask, Caroline. All I ask is that Monday morning, when we come together to do this show, and then all of a sudden it's proposed to us as a topic. Oh, my God, are the Texans the best team in the AFC? Look at what they just did to the Raiders. Can we finally acknowledge going into the weekend that, like, for me, the number's 40. If they beat the Raiders by more than 40, I'll be impressed. If it's 40, 30, anywhere in that range, you're just doing to the Raiders what any competent football team can do. Can we at least avoid the glow up on Monday when the Texans do what you've just predicted?
We have had to have that conversation. Any team the Raiders plays, it's like, is he hot or is he just wearing a backwards hat? It's like, are they good or are they just playing the Raiders? Like, we know the Texans are good. I mean, we even talked to Frank about this. I asked Frank if they were a Super Bowl contender. He was like, oh, yeah. With that defense, 100%. That's how good the Texans defense is. So we know the Texans are good. But how good is the question? Because it's the Raiders, okay? It's like varsity playing JV.
I need a break. I need to go hug my helmet, maybe find a Raiders jersey just to cry and wipe my tears through. Coming up, we'll get you picks.
Everybody hurts.
The pick six games you need to know the result for after I finish crying. Coming up next. NFL news has come in. Adam Schefter tweets out from ESPN sources, 6 weeks after trading for him, the Jags are finalizing a 3-year contract extension for wide receiver Jacoby Myers that ties him to Jacksonville through the 2028 season. Myers was scheduled to be a free agent after the season, but not anymore. In what's become really an incredible addition for the Jags. He's been wildly productive for this team. He's immediately stepped in and become a feature in this offense. The numbers, the catches, the yards, all of it. And Jacoby made it clear coming into the season, Caroline, he wanted to be somewhere where he could get paid and he could get more security. He gets that in the form of an extension for the Jags that's well earned. He's been a huge part of the rhythm of this offense turning around.
Yeah, he's been massive for them. That is the kind of move that you make at the trade deadline. I think about Jacoby Myers to the Jags. I think about Jalen Phillips to the Eagles, players that you can plug in and they immediately make an impact, especially with Travis Hunter going down for the season. They're losing a stretch the field, speedy kind of wide receiver. Good for Jacoby Myers. This is great. He's getting the money that he deserves and being such a perfect fit in that offense. And good on the Jags for locking up good players and paying good players and noticing when players are impact makers and difference makers. So I think this is a great move. I think that he has proven to be one of the key cogs of the transition that we've seen in the Jags season. Going from a weird, plucky kind of team that just wins games in strange ways and looks kind of drunk half the time to now a team that we view that can play spoiler in the postseason.
We should also add Rashid Shaheed to the list of midseason acquisitions that absolutely have been electric. Punt return last night.
Totally.
Turned that entire game around for the Seahawks. Congratulations to Jacoby on getting that contract. It is a Friday, and that means it is time for us to get you our picks the way we love to do it. We'll give you a pick six. We'll go through them. We'll figure out what games we agree on, what games we disagree on. Let's start the process. Let's get ourselves into the picks. The first game that we've got on the board is we'll go with a little college football. Alabama, Oklahoma. So if you see here, I'm getting crushed at this point. Disagreeing with you on college football is bad news, but I've done it. Alabama, Oklahoma. You're gonna roll Tide. I'm gonna go Oklahoma. Man, that Oklahoma defense is absolutely spectacular. I trust that Oklahoma defense more than I trust Ty Simpson to be able to make plays against that Oklahoma defense. That's why I roll Sooners on this one. Lean Sooners.
Yeah, I roll Tide on this one, and I see it with a lot of hesitation because Ty Simpson and this Bama offense has not looked right, has not looked the same. I think Ty Simpson was a little bit banged up toward the end of the season. We saw that against Georgia. It just wasn't clicking. He was overthrowing receivers. Receivers were dropping balls. They were making uncharacteristic mistakes. So I'm worried about this pick, but I always go back to the well of it's really hard to beat the same team twice in the same season. We saw that in the SEC championship game. It's the reason why I picked Georgia to win the SEC championship game because I thought Georgia and Kirby Yankin got twice in the same season. So I think that Bama is able to learn from their mistakes of playing another really difficult and stifling defense in Georgia in the SEC championship game. They've had 2 weeks to get healthy, to get right, to realize what went wrong against Georgia. So I think they're able to march into Norman, a very uninspiring offensive team, and they're able to get a close win.
We both have Texas A&M over Miami. I think that A&M defensive line is just going to absolutely feast on Carson Beck, who, let's just say politely, is not known for his mobility. They're going to be able to get after him. So I feel like that's a mismatch. You've got a Miami team that's going to struggle, I think, to get after the quarterback because of the mobility, and a Texas A&M team that is not going to struggle to get after the quarterback.
Yeah, not known for mobility and not known for ball security. He really, I don't trust Carson Beck in some of these big games. I don't trust Carson Beck under pressure. And you're going to tell me that this game's at Kyle Field? If you've never been to Kyle Field, it is one of the craziest environments that I've ever seen. The place literally shakes. It is massive. It is loud. The crowd is huge. And it's going to be a lot for Miami stepping into that environment. So I think Texas A&M's frankly able to roll in this one, understanding the last time that we saw Texas A&M, they got embarrassed against their arch rivals in Texas. They've been stewing over that for weeks. I think you're going to see just the thunder of the gods in this A&M team.
A reminder, it's a noon kickoff. That is the early kickoff because college football did the smart thing and they buried the 2 blowouts against the NFL. Packers at Bears. We both have the Packers in this one. Are we disrespecting the Bears? Like I don't know. Like
probably
every week I say, this is the week I'll believe in the Bears. I don't know.
Probably disrespecting the Bears just a little bit. It being at Soldier Field obviously gives the Bears an advantage here, but the Packers have been a zigzag team. They win, they lose, they lose, they win. I had kind of a dud against the Broncos last week. I think that fuels them to a big game this week.
We disagree on Bucks at Panthers, and I'll be honest. I just looked at this and said, why the hell not? The last time the Panthers lost to the Saints, the week after they had their most explosive offensive performance passing the ball of the year against the Falcons. So maybe the Saints are the twice-a-year wake-up call that the Panthers need. I just don't trust. Right now, I don't trust the beat-up Bucks. I don't really trust the Panthers either, but they're not playing the Saints, so maybe they have a shot.
Yeah, if your wake-up call comes in the form of the New Orleans Saints, who are really bad, then I don't know what to tell you. It came down to the quarterbacks for me here. I don't have a whole lot of trust in the Buccaneers, but you know who I do trust? Baker Mayfield. You know who I trust to make a play when he absolutely positively needs to? Baker Mayfield. Whose hands am I going to put the ball in when I need a play? Baker Mayfield's. Credit to Bryce Young. He's shown me a lot this season, but I'll still ride with Baker. I'll take the Bucs.
Jags and Broncos
As I
for
wear a
me. I
Charlotte
just don't.
shirt.
I don't. Right, 100%. I don't like Florida teams going to Denver in this cold. I also don't really trust Trevor Lawrence against a great defense, so that's why I went Broncos.
Yeah, and also I continue to pick against the Broncos, and I continue to look like a fool, I tell you,
Like
and
a
I will
fool.
do that no more. I am on the Broncos train. They are a Super Bowl contender. Bo Nix has been so fun to watch. He's gotten better week over week. Broncos at home, yeah, I will take that team 1,000 times a day.
And we both take the Patriots to lose to the Ravens. We're both taking
Is that
Baltimore.
gross?
The disrespect for the New England Patriots
Seriously.
shan't stand. I mean, what are we doing here?
What are we doing here? I was shocked that this was one that we both agreed on. We were asked to give our picks. We both said unanimously, oh, I'll take the Ravens. Like, wait, what? Spider-Man meme kind of moment. I'll go back to my Monday headline thought and rationale for the Ravens beating the Patriots. It's never that easy in the National Football League. And it feels like the Patriots have had it just a little bit too easy lately. I think they get a wake-up call against the Ravens.
Yeah, I think there's this moment where we were too high on the Ravens for a while they played terrible football. Now they're starting to play better football, but we're slow to adjust because we've seen a lot of bad football. This game is a good prove-it opportunity for both teams. The Patriots obviously coming off that loss to the Bills. Let's see how they rebound. I know that we'll be back here Monday morning to cover every single ounce of it, hanging out with you at 9 a.m. on Monday. Have a great weekend. She's Caroline Fenton. I'm Jason Fitz. Thanks so much for watching Yahoo Sports Daily. Have a safe weekend.